Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justin Healy. I'm with Spark Market Research, part of the Audience Collective, and
my name is Liz Myers, and I am also with Spark Market Research, part of the Audience Collective.
So we wanted to talk to you today just briefly on a few different topics. You may have seen across our social media in recent weeks, we've been talking about what you don't know can hurt you. I suppose trying to shed some light on what we do, which is market research in UK, Ireland, all across the world. What we wanted to talk about a little bit today was some of the things we do know. Because obviously on a day-to-day basis, we speak to consumers, clients, and stakeholders all over the place. And thankfully, it gives us an insight into what's happening in each of the markets, how people are behaving. And I suppose we're very fortunate to be in that position. So we wanted to share some of that insight with you. And hopefully that helps you in terms of managing your brands.
I always like to say that in our job, Justin, we just go around being nosy and finding out everyone's secrets. So we're here today to share some of those secrets with you.
Exactly. Let's share some secrets. So sustainability. Sustainability, something people have been talking about a lot over the last few years.
Really?
And particularly pre the pandemic and during the pandemic, it was something that I think people saw as an area they could get involved in. They could try and make a difference. I know myself, I found myself walking on the beach, picking up plastic, trying to, choose what I bought based on being a little bit more sustainable. But what's really interesting, and I thought that's the way it was going to go.
Yeah.
I thought we'd just get more sustainable and eventually we'd hit that tipping point and, more people would be more concerned. But that's changed. Like you're doing some research recently. You said there's been a bit of change. What's happened?
So we've done a really interesting piece on just kind of the state of sustainability in 2022, where it lies in terms of customers' priorities. And you're absolutely right. I think prior to 2022, and I think this was heightened during the pandemic when we were all sat at home, we're seeing the kind of waste that we accumulate. We're not getting rid of stuff on the day to day. People became more engaged. I think it gave us a sense of control back as well in a moment when we were, we didn't have a lot of control. It was something we could do. It was a way we could take action. Whereas what's happening now in 2022 that I find really interesting, and what I'm hearing from the consumers who've spoken to recently, is it has taken a bit of a backseat and a lot more of the onus has gone onto brands. So where previously people might have seen themselves work in partnership with brands and thought, I have to do my bit and the brands can help me out. It's very much now moved to this, it's a hygiene factor. They just want the brands to give them easy and simple solutions.
But are people just getting lazy then? Or why is it taking a backseat?
I think it's not necessarily laziness. I think ease does come into it. And, post-pandemic, we're all a lot busier. Other thing, we're moving around a lot more. We're not home all the time. But I don't think it's just a post-pandemic thing. I think, looking at the current economic situation as well, price, cost can often be a barrier. And where during the pandemic, again, people might have had a bit more income floating around because they weren't commuting, they weren't spending in other areas. They were able to make those more sustainable choices and a little bit more willing to pay for them. Whereas now it very much feels like it's switched to, actually, it's on the brands to give me that at a price that is appealing or to give me an incentive to be more sustainable.
So is it that you need to have time and money to be sustainable then?
Yeah,
absolutely. Is sustainability more of a luxury?
Yeah, and I think that's where it's shifting towards now. And as I said, the work that we've done recently, we had some really interesting comments where our younger audience were kind of going, the older group who are further in their careers, they've got more money to spend on it. And then our older audience were going, these young'uns that have got more disposable income, it's a thing for them. So there's this real passing of the buck.
That actually is really interesting, because work I'd done previously on that showed that people, like empty nesters particularly, had more time, had more disposable income, and they were pushing the green agenda and trying to be more sustainable.
Yeah.
But now, based on what you're saying, it's actually just working families maybe who can't afford to be as sustainable, and it's the younger people maybe who are trying to be more so. So which brands, you're saying that the onus is on the brands?
Yeah.
Have we any brands? Which brands are doing this well, or
I think
any examples?
The onus very much is on kind of the CPG, FMCG and the retail brands. It's really those brands where you can see the unsustainable practices. So you can see the effects of fast fashion. You can see in grocery when there's excess packaging, things like that. It's very visible impact. So those are the brands that consumers have always wanted to work alongside them, but more so now it's this holding them responsible. The kind of brands that we had called out as doing well in this space were brands like Lidl who have their bottle and can return scheme. So you can take all your bottles and cans down to Lidl and you get money off your receipt, or you get a voucher to spend in store. So there's that, you feel good, you've done a nice thing, and you get a little incentive as well, because as we said, money can be a barrier. And similarly with H&M actually in the retail space, so they have a clothing return scheme where you can return clothes to them, they'll recycle them and you get a nice voucher to spend in store. So it's fairly easy, fairly simple, but the key thing there is that incentive, that what's in it for me.
Do you think that customers are as quick to spot greenwashing now, or is it that everything's become a little bit more hectic? Are they kind of likely to let that slide, or where are they at?
I actually think this is another really interesting point of the research is, again, because of the context of the pandemic, because of some of the context of, say, the energy crisis and rising fuel prices, brands generally are under a lot more scrutiny now. There's a definite sense of cynicism that I haven't seen from consumers before. We've always had a more cynical group of consumers, but across the board in the research we've done, we had this sense of cynicism, which I would say definitely means their eyes and ears are open to greenwashing. They want to hear about sustainable initiatives. They want to hear what you're doing and how you're helping them, but you have to be able to back that up. It has to be credible.
So brands need to step up.
Yeah. Brands have got to step up. They've got to take that responsibility. As we said, the onus very much in their hands now.
Interesting. One of the areas that has obviously been top of mind for a lot of people over the last few months is, it's actually funny because in the UK, we call it the cost of living crisis.
Yes, we're very highly strung here.
Yeah, in Ireland, it's more, the rising energy prices. And they'll talk about more specifics, which maybe is just peculiar to, I suppose, the sensibilities in Ireland. But either way, look, it amounts to the same thing in that, money's tighter, inflation is up. You could say that in the UK, due to some particular economic decisions that have been taken, maybe that's compounded the process. Either way, look, it's not great across both markets. I know we see it further afield as well, but just looking at the UK, Ireland, again, it's something that's happening, it's inevitable. But from our point of view, it presents opportunities as well, which I think is interesting. And I know some of the research you've been doing recently actually pointed to some of those opportunities.
Yeah, it does indeed present opportunities. Difficult times present opportunity, and it's always interesting for brands how they act on that. And we've heard a lot from customers and consumers about what they want to see. But I think one thing that's really interesting for me, similar to the topic of sustainability, is the impact that COVID has had. We are living in this post-pandemic, in air quotes, world, and what that's done for consumers and the conversation that it's opened up. Because previously we might have spoken about something called the lipstick effect. I'm sure you're familiar with the lipstick effect, but
I am, not that
for
I
people
wear
that aren't,
much lipstick.
For people that aren't, the idea of the lipstick effect is that during times of economic crisis or recession, sales of lipstick actually increase. It's one of the categories that goes up massively.
It's one of the little trees. You might be able to afford the other makeup.
People are cutting back on, in other areas, and they want to feel good. So, put some lippy on, face the day.
This would be because I suppose from my point of view, I might go and if everything's flying, you might go in, you might buy, I don't know, I play some golf. You might go and buy golf balls.
Yeah.
The little thing, I bought something new. I've treated myself a little bit.
Yeah, it's that.
And I go out and lose them straight away. but at least I go and buy them. Yeah.
It's exactly that. It's the small treats, and I always like to think of this as I have a term for this, my own personal term for this, which is the extra special effect, which is very much harkens to my love of shopper insight that we've seen this before. Is that, again, in times of difficulty, low consumer confidence, recessions, things like that, we actually see increases in the top tier, the premier, the more deluxe range of grocery products. So for Asda here in the UK, that would be the extra special range, because again, you're trying to save money on your bills. You're not going on holiday this year. You're cutting back on the big things. You're in the supermarket. You're thinking, do you know what? I deserve that tiramisu.
But did we not come into 2022? I say we as brands. The brands are coming to 2022 kind of going, finally.
Yeah. So
pandemic's done, right? More or less it's done. People can get back to a bit of normality. We heard that so often.
So much,
So you can imagine brands, they're kind of fair enough, kind of going, do you know what? Now it's time to make a little bit of hay. So now let's maybe launch that new product that maybe is a little bit of a premium version.
Yeah.
Let's, try and make up for some lost ground over the last 2 years. I know some food brands did really, really well, but even foods and services, they said, let's charge a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it hasn't gone as they've...
It hasn't got, I had a client say to me the other day, which I think really nailed it, was that, I just like a month of precedented times. We've had, lots of unprecedented times in the previous 2 years, and you're absolutely right. I think we came into 2022 we thought behaviour was going to change. We have now come into, difficult economic times. As you say, cost of living crisis in the UK, as we term it. It's more focused on energy and inflation in Ireland, but the kind of behaviours that people are engaging in, I think it will be interesting to see, are they doing those little treats? Because you have to remember that during the pandemic as well, we couldn't do the big treats. We couldn't go on holiday for periods of time,
Just weren't allowed.
Some of the shops were closed, so you might not necessarily be able to go out and get the golf clubs, get the full set of...
Yeah, the closed golf courses. I still don't understand that. Still closed golf courses, why? I'm outside near nobody. But some brands are doing it really well though.
Yeah, so I think some brands are having that real kind of... Right now, what consumers want is this authentic conversation. We're in times of crisis here. This is going to be a really tough period of time for people. They're worried about paying their bills. They're worried about the mortgage. They don't need brands kind of pulling the wool over their eyes or going, oh, treat yourselves. They want an open and honest conversation. And I think we've seen some really nice examples of this. Again, I love grocery insights, so I'm going to use some grocery examples. But I think Lidl in Ireland, I remember when I was over in Dublin in March, seeing the billboards for their Inflation Busters campaign. The kind of feed a family of 4 for a certain price point.
Isn't that the girl on TikTok? And it's feeding a family of 5 for less than £5 or €5, and it's
feed for this or weekly shop on this budget. It's very practical, because I had a respondent in a group the other day saying, we're playing a pounds and pence game now. We're counting the pennies, and again, I think the brands that are really open and honest about that are going to see the wins.
I think it's so basically, like brands always say, I think consumers kind of want that long-term relationship with brands.
Yeah.
And that means that we're there for you for the good times, where we're going to buy the premium product, and we're going to buy the NPD, and we're going to just chance it, and hey, maybe we don't like what we go for anyway, we'll treat ourselves. They need to be there within the bad times too.
Yeah.
Or the harder times, and that's now.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, we've seen time and time again, that makes the brand stickier, it builds equity in the brand, it makes consumers more loyal, it builds stories around the brand that says, when I was in trouble, they were there for me. Like I know grocery, we see it, FMCG, we see it, services, we see it, like banks, it's massive,
a huge opportunity
huge
now
area.
Financial services.
You need to be there. People want, which is ironic, because there was quite a time when people were saying, oh, people don't care anymore, their brand promiscuous, it's going to jump from one to the next. They actually want, in certain categories, they definitely need more of a relationship. Yeah. So brands need to be there for them at this time.
Yeah, that's it. People, similar to as we said with sustainability, be there for them, empower them, help them make those choices in these times of difficulty, and that will build the long-term loyalty when things are better, hopefully.
Yeah.
So one of the topics that's constantly coming up when we're speaking to people is technology, and I think you can't talk about technology now without talking about the metaverse. So there's probably some people out there thinking, what is the metaverse? Liz, what are you on about? So it has escaped the pages of sci-fi novels now. I'm a big sci-fi fan, so I feel like I was a step ahead of this. It doesn't often happen to me. The metaverse has now become a very real thing, and Facebook really pushing this. They've rebranded as Meta. They have this vision of a version of the internet that we can live and exist in using technology like VR, augmented reality, where you can have this version of yourself, this online version, this online life, all of your things that you like to buy in real life, things you like to have in real life are on there, and you almost have this secondary existence in the metaverse. But let's get a little bit more into that, because we've been doing some research, haven't we, about...
We have. So we were fascinated when we were talking about the metaverse, because it seems to be quite a disruptive area. People are saying, like the metaverse, I know it's coming, and there's nearly an assumption that it's definitely coming. What is it? I don't really know. Like you've kind of given a good example there. You have a virtual you and you have your real you. But we wanted to, obviously, our job isn't just to guess and see what people think. We wanted to actually do some research and get some facts on it. So we did quite a large piece of research. You may have seen, actually, there's a report. We've a report out on, this is also referred to as the fifth revolution, so Revolution 5.0. And we have a report on that. And if you haven't got it, if you want to just get in touch, we can send it on to you and go through with you, no problem. But we did a big piece of research across the UK and the US, where we did a large quantitative piece and also a qualitative piece speaking to people. And just, I think, some of the interesting facts from that, and it is very robust and reliable, so we can talk about it with confidence. I think, definitely, personally speaking, prior to doing the research, there was a feeling of, this is inevitable, this is the way it's going, we all got to jump on board, it's happening no matter what. So many interesting facts. So we found that over the US and the UK, 35% of people on average feel that they're controlled by technology.
See, this was fascinating to me because isn't this the area where because we spoke to different generations to understand obviously the impact of their technology. So there was something very interesting in the Gen Z.
Yeah, well, the thing is 35% feel controlled by technology. First of all, I thought that was quite high. But then I thought, well, if we talk to Gen Zs and younger people, they're going to say, well, I don't feel controlled by technology.
I'm in control of technology.
Yeah, well, actually, it's the converse. 40% of Gen Zs feel controlled by technology. So it kind of leads us to believe that actually maybe it isn't just the the continuing march of of progress or of the metaverse. Actually, maybe there's this generation Gen Zs who are saying, you know what, it's gone a little bit too far. Possibly, they're starting to question their interactions with technology. They're starting to wonder if maybe it has to be like that. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm not naive. We're not naive. We know technology and progress and that is going to continue to happen. But I think it's really, really important when, as we do, we talk to clients and brands and how they manage the technology they put out into the world. And I don't just mean products. I mean how they engage with their customers through customer service, through online retail. There's so many ways that technology now has become part and parcel of what we do.
Yeah. I think the conversation, isn't it, is around how do you keep that technology more human? And I think that's what we definitely saw in our research was what does human in technology mean?
Yeah, over half the people we spoke to, so 56%, are scared for future generations.
Wow.
In terms of technology. Yeah. It really was. And this, again, I keep coming back to this is facts. This isn't us just saying, you're making it up for for headlines. Over half people are scared for future generations, thinking, well, where is it going to go?
Yeah, what's that next step? What does it look like?
Yeah, how do I get involved? How do I jump on board? It's just moving so fast now. I was speaking to a client recently who was actually involved in a tech company, tech retailer, and they kind of had a theory. Now, this is just their theory, but I thought it was interesting. They were saying that maybe previous generations, boomers, Gen X, everything was new, everything was wonderful. We were all learning and, like I remember getting my first Walkman, then a Discman, then it was a mini disc, then it was all better, better, better. But maybe we've just plateaued a little bit now and it's kind of a case of, it's kind of good enough. Yeah. I don't need the next bit as much.
I can wait for the next big thing.
I can wait for the next big thing. Yes, so maybe that's why they're scared. So it does lead to a place where, again, from brands interacting, we found that 64% of the people we spoke to, so nearly 2/3 of the people we spoke to, feels that companies are they kind of lost their touch in relation to technology.
Yeah.
And technology is kind of running away from them.
Yeah, it's going too far.
Yeah, it's going too far. So it does, like the point you made at the start in relation to the metaverse, it's coming. And in the future, you will have your virtual you and your real you. Yeah. So we know anyone, marketing people listening to this, the first thing we look at is who's our target in terms of a campaign, or we've both worked client side. Who's our campaign? Who are we targeting? What do we want to tell them? What's the benefit to the customer, and so on. But now you're going to have two targets. So you're going to have the real person and the virtual person. And if social media is, let's be honest, social media most of the time is your highlight reel.
Yeah.
So are we now marketing to the highlight reel? Or are we marketing to the real person?
It's such a good point, isn't it? Because you hear people talk about all the time of like, oh, the algorithm's listening to me, or like, the stuff that I get pushed on social media. Sometimes, and people talk about this as almost a funny little anecdote, is some of the stuff that gets pushed to you because the technology has decided you're a particular type of person. The virtual highlights real version of you would like to buy this product or brand, but what does the real you want? And the disjoint there, I think, is going to be a struggle.
But in that disjoint, as like in any tension, is going to be opportunity for brands, completely, and I mean genuine opportunity. There's going to be genuine opportunity to help people and create new products that help people through this kind of journey. What we've done across the piece of research we did is we've looked at the metaverse and technology and developments across functional, emotional, and social drivers, and really, I suppose, benchmarked lots of brands in terms of that because they are the three things that matter. So we can talk about, people buy emotion. That's really, really important. Yeah. Function in terms of technology, obviously it's pretty obvious in terms of how we engage from a technological point of view. But social is really important too because, brand purpose still drives everything. Like the why, as Simon Sinek says, the why. And if the why is going to be impacted an awful lot by the metaverse, it's not just a channel.
Yeah,
it's a huge change.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you start to think then, okay, well, what are the actions that brands could take in the metaverse from that brand purpose point of view? Because again, much like we've said, there's the real life consumer, there's the metaverse consumer. That relationship is true for brands, and how you behave in the metaverse is going to influence how people interact with you in real life.
Yeah, look, it's fascinating. We've a lot more data on that. Please, if you haven't seen the report, get in touch. We can go through it with you, no problem at all. It's something that a lot of people are going to be talking an awful lot more about in the coming months, but please get in touch.
So obviously we've shared a lot of stuff, secrets as I called it, from the consumers that we've been speaking to, and we've spoken a lot about the role of brands throughout this. Naturally, we do spend a lot of our time talking to clients and brands who are also consumers. They are normal people, but it's interesting to consider, we've talked about the potential opportunities here and also some of the challenges that brands are going to face based on all of these things that we've discussed. So we know that the Gartner report's a bit of a Bible for us, isn't it? It's, for those who don't know what the Gartner report is, it's a survey of over 400 chief marketing officers across various different organisations who feedback really on exactly that. What are their challenges and opportunities that they're seeing? And I think the latest version of that has been really interesting for us, some of the findings we've seen.
It has, and I think if we look at it, so obviously it's a little bit different to the other consumer insights we've been talking about, but coming into recessionary times, we can see that there's an awful lot of pressure, particularly around hiring across client agents or client companies and agencies, but particularly around hiring. So it means they're going to try and do a lot of the same work with fewer people.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really work. So that's puts them under a bit of pressure. And then besides that, again, they've said, well, actually, there's all these other kind of challenges and worries we had at the same time, which are now being compounded by the recession. Things like, we've mentioned previously, the metaverse, so technology, how technology is changing. Things like customer and consumer understanding. And there was a time where literally, we'd say to people if they were tracking consumer maybe sentiment, once every 6 months is fine.
Yeah.
Like 6 weeks, things change so frequently
so
now.
Quick. I think I came out of some of the topics that we've talked about today absolutely reeling, because I was talking about this 3 months ago with consumers, and it's a totally different conversation now. It changes all the time. It's
all change. Other things, data and analytics. We heard, obviously, being a research agency for years, we heard, big data is going to change everything. Big data has changed everything, but to a certain extent, the big data is not big insight.
Yeah.
Big difference. Totally and so they have these challenges happening at the same time where they're trying to reduce the number of employees they have. Probably they're going to reduce their marketing spend. And the big ones won't. Actually, there's a really interesting article. Did you see the article with Mark Ritz in Marketing Week, where he talks about the example of
the Coca-Cola P&G stuff?
Coca-Cola P&G, exactly.
I love this.
And he talked about the fact that during the pandemic, in terms of reducing marketing spend, P&G were asked, so you're going to reduce marketing spend, aren't you? Because there's a pandemic, are people spending money? And they went, there's a guy, John Mueller, who's now the CEO, went, no, we're not doing that. We're actually going to double it down. Yeah. We're going to spend more. Coca-Cola took the opposite side and went, actually, we're going to hang back.
Yeah.
And really interestingly, this is 2020, end of 2020, Coke had lost, they reduced their net revenue overall. Pepsi had actually increased, not to the full extent, it had gone elsewhere as well, but definitely taken Coke's share. And P&G had gone up. So much so he was actually promoted from the CMO to actually the CEO, John Rover at P&G. So anyway, the brands are under pressure to reduce marketing spend. The best brands won't. And it's a really good article. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's in Marketing Week. But I suppose, not a hard sell, but it is where brands do need to rely more on their agencies.
Yeah.
And also on the right agencies. So if you have it, when money is tight, don't be working with agencies that aren't going to deliver. And I'm saying, even if our agency or our clients are listening to this, push us, make sure you're asking us all the right questions. Get every bit out of us, because now is the time we need to work together. Even more so.
Yeah.
And make sure that works. And I think, look, this too will end. This too shall pass. But I think at the moment, it's a case of when everyone's feeling under pressure, consumers are feeling under pressure, agents are feeling under pressure, but clients particularly are feeling it because their expectations are still to hit a certain level of growth. It's harder to do it, less resource. So just lean on those around you. And really, the main one we would say is, obviously from our point of view, is lean on the agencies.